What's up, everyone? Happy New Year's Eve here on the Denver Sports Podcast, and a hell of a year it was, 2024. We're talking all about this last year, wrapping up the 2024 season for all of Colorado sports teams, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that coming up next here on the Denver Sports Podcast. What is up, everyone? Welcome in to the Toyota Lounge, live here in studio. It's the Denver Sports Podcast. We've got some bowl game watching going on downstairs at the bar here, DNVR bar. We're joined by a special guest, Justin Michael, coming to us live. How's it going, Justin? Happy almost New Year, man. It's been a good year.
Happy New Year to you as well, man. I'm stoked. It was a interesting year. A lot happened, I feel like. It was a very event-filled year, both for the Colorado sports scene and me personally, but I'm excited to, be here with you and chop it up a little bit. This is our first show together, man.
It is. I know. I'm excited. And now that, at least for, the Colorado football teams here, for college at least, you got a little time to hang out with us here, because I know it's been a hectic year for you guys, covering CSU. The college football scene this year has just been incredible. We're going to talk a little bit about college football. We're going to talk about, really all the teams here in Colorado as we do this season wrap-up, talking about the best moments of 2024, the worst moments of 2024. But I got to start by just kind of at least acknowledging how bleak of a weekend it was for Colorado football in general. Broncos, Buffs, Rams, all three of the major Colorado football teams just kind of got kicked in the mouth, so to speak, I would say, over the last weekend. So I got to ask you specifically, since you were covering the CSU bowl game, how are you recovering and handling everything as the college football season has wrapped up?
Yeah, I'm in the process of writing a deep dive that was kind of a reflection on the bowl game as a whole, which was an awesome experience and something that both CSU and CU fans can relate to. It had been a long time, so it was cool for the fans to have that opportunity. But it kind of felt like a perfect summation of what the last 2 decades have been for college football in this state, which is whenever you start to feel optimistic, whenever you start to feel hope, they kind of come up short when the lights are brightest on that biggest stage. And I think a lot of local college football fans are just starting to feel like Charlie Brown. Like, are we ever going to kick that football? We keep running it up and trying, and Lucy keeps pulling it away. And we're just sitting here on the ground like, why did we think it was going to be any different? But very clearly, there was objective success. Both of these programs went the right way. CSU, especially their first winning season since 2017. They won a couple of rivalry games. Like, an 8-win season's nothing to scoff at. I think what's just been hard, and I think the Broncos the same way, is despite the fact that you can see it's clearly going in the right direction, there's a lot of meat being left on these bones.
Yeah, a lot of holes. And that, I think, is where it feels so frustrating for a lot of fans. We feel tantalizingly close, and it's a roller coaster. And that's, if there was one word that I could use to encapsulate the 2024 season for all of our sports teams, pretty much, it's the word roller coaster. It literally feels like, for the Nuggets, for the Avs, for the Broncos, at least for, the professional teams, you're going up and down. The expectations are sky high. You feel like the sky is the limit. And there are moments where you play into that. And then there are also moments where you feel like you're at your lowest. The Avs are struggling to figure out what their goaltending situation was looking like before they made those trades. The Nuggets, dealing with injuries and, some controversies around the culture and all of that kind of stuff. Then the Broncos, you could go through each one. And we are going to talk about each team individually as this show goes on. But college football felt the exact same way, for both CSU and CU. Just a roller coaster of emotions year round. And unfortunately, it ended in 2 bowl losses, but you said it. In the grand picture of things, yes, those bowl losses suck. It sucks getting kicked in the teeth, in the last game of the year. But in the grand picture of things, it was a successful season for both CU and CSU. And you feel like the teams took good steps forward. There was growth there. And so I think, when you look back and you wrap up what the 2024 season looked like, at least for college football here in Colorado, you gotta hold your chin up high. It was a good year for both the teams.
Yeah, I mean, objectively it was. And I think the emotion that comes from the reaction to all of this, and some of it may be feeling slightly like a letdown or slightly hollow, just given the way that the season ends, like I said, has more to do with the past 20 years. There's some scars that come back into play, but you have to be realistic about it. And I think the hope now is that the floor has been established, essentially. This can't be the ceiling, is the mindset I believe that, both of these programs need to take moving forward, especially in a landscape of college football that's just changing by the minute. It's tough to stay relevant, and you got to strike while the iron is hot. But yeah, I mean, very clearly, a major step in the right direction. This is the most relevant that college football has been in this state since the early 2000s. Like, you got to go back to those CSU-CU showdowns in like 2001, 2002, the end of Sonny Lubick, Gary Barnett era, outside of these last couple of years. So as a lifelong college football guy, as the type of fan that was in the stands when there were, less than 15,000 people at some of those games, it's cool to see, both of the programs back in a competitive state and at least somewhat nationally relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to talk more about college football as the show goes on, but I gotta jump into some of our big talking points here, because it is New Year's Eve. We're celebrating all things that was 2024, this entire season of Colorado sports. So I got to ask you right off the bat, we'll start with this. Biggest positive surprise in 2024 for you personally across all the teams, any team you want. Just pick your favorite or most positive surprise that hit you in 2024 across the entire year.
I would say it was both college basketball teams winning an NCAA tournament game.
Oh, I love that.
Against fairly substantial and historically relevant programs. I know that Florida and Virginia aren't necessarily what they once were, Virginia especially, and CSU won kind of an ugly game against them. But I'm a college basketball guy. I think the NCAA tournament is up there with the best sporting events on the calendar. And to show up and, basically the opposite of the bowl experience, both teams compete in a national stage and show up. Like, I thought that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I love that. I like that you took a more specific approach to that too, because college basketball, I think, especially in Colorado, gets overlooked because, let's be real, we're pretty heavily invested in our football teams, especially this time of year, and so basketball seems to kind of get overlooked, and it's not like Colorado is known for college basketball, historically, like some other states are. So I love that take. You also have had some pretty wild games for college basketball, in this recent season as well, which for both CU and CSU. So college basketball, and I agree with you, March Madness is one of my favorite sporting tournaments of all time. I'm going to take the easy route, though, on this answer. I'm going to go with probably the easiest answer that a lot of you at home are probably feeling like. Biggest positive surprise from all of our sports teams in 2024. It's got to be the Broncos, because if you look back at where we were this time at the beginning of 2024, you literally, New Year's Eve a year ago, we had Russell Wilson on the team. The team was kind of in shambles. You were already starting to trying to have this conversation of like, what's the outlook for the team look like next year? And as the season progressed, you ended up, letting Russell Wilson go. You had the $90 million in dead cap space. Like, all of those talking points loomed large over the Broncos this year. You took Bo Nix in the draft. There was still a lot of questions on, is he going to be the guy for your team long term? Hell, is he even going to be the starting quarterback for your team? Is it going to be Stidham or Wilson? What does that look like for the Broncos? And then for the Broncos to not only overcome that, but to solidify Bo Nix as a franchise quarterback, at least for now, and to have a vision moving forward as a successful franchise, a franchise that should very well make the playoffs this year and should hopefully, continue to make the playoffs for years to come. I think that, to me, is the biggest positive surprise out of 2024. The Broncos became a relevant team again when, going into this time last year, it felt like that was a big question mark.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and it's the last 8-9 years have been pretty bleak. My family's had season tickets since the late 60s, so I've been a Broncos supporter as long as I've been on this planet, and this has been about as bleak of a stretch when you look at things historically since the franchise very first started in the 60s. So I think a lot of people, when Sean Payton came in, this was what they expected, right? Like, we wanted to be back, relevance, competing, in the playoffs and stuff. So again, I think this is somewhat what was expected. But again, you have to be realistic, kind of going back to what we said about the college football process and building programs that way. Like, it takes some time to rebuild a franchise that's been a mess. And there were some competitive moments under Russell Wilson, but I think to be able to hit the ground running the way that the Broncos have with a rookie quarterback and the financial constraints caused by having to eat all that dead cap money to move on from Wilson, it's pretty impressive. They're certainly ahead of schedule, but I do think it is pretty imperative that they make the playoffs, because I think if you, even from all objective standpoints, having already, significantly cleared the win total, you've outplayed all national expectations. If you close the season by going 0-3 and failing to clinch, I do think that kind of rains on the whole parade and maybe puts a lot more pressure going into next season than you would have otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of CU fans have that same feeling about last season, where you had such a good start. CU football, Colorado got off to such a hot start to start their season, and they had all this momentum, and then it just kind of fizzled away. You hope that doesn't become the case for the Broncos. Now, the Broncos guys just sat here and talked just minutes before we jumped on about all the implications coming up. They're playing the Chiefs. From what it looks like, they're going to be playing, deep into the Chiefs' backups. This is a game that the Broncos very well should win. And I will push all of the audience towards the Broncos show, for that kind of coverage. I think for me, though, my biggest takeaway is just the fact that the Broncos have just exceeded expectations. And that's why, like you said, there is the expectation now that, like, hey, the ceiling has moved. The bar has changed. You got to go get into the playoffs at least now, because that's what we've been seeing out of your team over the last few weeks, last few months. And so I feel like the Broncos have been the biggest success story out of all of our Colorado sports teams here this year, just given what the expectations were going into the year. And I know you can make the argument that both CSU and CU football teams had, kind of question marks around them going into the start of the season. But I think the Broncos took the cake for at least, the biggest depth that they were starting in and able to overcome that. So it's cool to see how the Broncos are doing that. But yeah, you got a big game coming up here that you gotta take care of business as the Chiefs roll into town. Does that game concern you at all? As a lifetime Broncos fan, you had just said to me just seconds ago, like, you hate to kind of feel like the worst outcome is going to be the outcome that happens. Does it make you nervous, the Broncos playing the Chiefs coming up here?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, they've had our number for the majority of the last decade. And I know that Mahomes is not playing, which is a massive, massive advantage. And honestly, the Broncos have been highly competitive against the Chiefs largely for most of the Mahomes era. Like, they've lost a lot of games against him that they've been right there in and were there for the taking. If the Broncos had a real quarterback, they probably could have won a couple of those. Certainly should have had him in Kansas City. I mean, I think that kind of adds to it, is you should have beat the starters. So if you then lose to the backups, it's like, man, but I don't know. There's just something about this Chiefs team. They find a way to win. They win ugly. They win big. They win small. They win lucky. They just win. And it's been a long time since the Broncos have proven that they can step up when this is when it's this type of situation. And you've now, frankly, lost 2 straight games, with the same opportunity. So again, like, you do have a lot in your favor with the Chiefs not playing the starters, but I'm really nervous just because it's been a long time since we've seen this team prove that they are a playoff team.
I don't know, man. I feel like the fact that the starters aren't playing, yes, on paper that gives you an advantage. That makes me even more nervous because if the Broncos, it is like it feels like, and I have all the faith in the world on the Broncos. Like I have loved what I've seen from them for most of this season, but that little part in the back of my brain that says, like you better keep things together here. It would just be devastating. It would be heartbreaking if that did not work. Did we lose a camera here? I got you, man. Hey, we got to take a break here anyways. After the break, though, I do want to go into best moments per team. I tried to get a list together of at least my personal favorite moments for each team throughout 2024. So I'll go through that list. We'll see if you resonate with some of that, Justin, and if you have any other ideas on best moments of 2024 per team. But before we do, we're gonna give a shout out to some friends here in just a moment. Yaya is getting me set back up, taking care of all the business. We appreciate you, Yaya, ringing in the new year in style here. But yeah, got to give a shout out to some friends here on the Denver Sports Podcast. Starting off with our friends over at HelloFresh, because look, HelloFresh is truly one of my favorite meal plans, and I've been using HelloFresh since long before they became a sponsor here at DNVR. I've been using them back when I was in Spokane, working out at that TV station in Spokane. I mean, it's been a while that Marissa and I have been using HelloFresh. And the reason is because they are, I love cooking, but they have great meals that you get delivered to your door. Everything, all the ingredients, everything's all prepackaged, ready for you. And all you have to do, 15 to 30 minutes of putting everything together, and it's fresh cooked right there. The ingredients, the recipe, it's all easy to understand, and you get a home-cooked meal with everything pretty much already prepared for you. And that's what I love about it. It's not like you're getting stuff that just shows up to you and all you have to do is just kind of heat it up and it's ready. You get to actually cook a little bit, and it smells good. Your house smells great. Like it's a little bit of investment, but you also still don't have to worry about going to the grocery store, filling up your shopping cart with tons of stuff and having tons of like leftover spices and all this stuff that just sits in your pantry. Everything is pre-proportioned and just made ready for you, ready to go. That's why I love HelloFresh. I've been using them for years. They are truly one of my favorite places, especially when I'm cooking my dinners. Like it's my favorite go-to for dinners when I get home. 15 to 30 minutes of just prepping some meals, and it's a great sit-down dinner for my wife and I. So check them out. You can get 10 free boxes, or 10 free meals, I should say, at HelloFresh.com/free I've got the code here, free Rockies, but you can use that applied across 7 boxes. New subscriber only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/all caps free Rockies. Again, that's my code that I use for our Rockies show. They are America's number one meal kit. We appreciate them doing business with us. Also got to give a shout out to our friends over at Bet365. At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. And Justin and I, we were just talking a little bit about college hoops, and I say it every show. College basketball is my favorite sport to bet on. I love betting on the college basketball world, especially as you get close to March Madness. And just like January jumped in super quick for us. I mean, it feels like, it feels like it was July just like weeks ago. March is going to be coming around the corner too. And there's going to be some incredible bets going on around that world. But college football, the playoffs are happening. We've got bowl games going on right now. Whatever you're into, Bet365 has you covered, and you can use the code DNVR365 when you sign up. Deposit $10 and choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5 or more and getting to $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive the match refund in bonus bets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, welcome back here on the Denver Sports Podcast. Christian Saez and CSU beat writer, beat reporter, host Justin Michael hanging out with us on the pod. All right, we're talking best moments, best memories per team of 2024. And Justin, I'll actually let you start this one off, man, because you had a hell of a run covering the Rams and a pretty fun year for them. So what was your favorite memory for CSU, for CSU football, I should say, of 2024?
It's got to be securing the bronze boot. I mean, CSU Wyoming is a historic rivalry. Obviously, the Rams came up short in the Rocky Mountain Showdown, so on that side, a letdown for us. If you're a fan of the other team, probably very great moment, kind of like how they came up short against Nebraska, but got CSU. So hey, I got to get a couple of shots in there, right?
Of course.
No, yeah, I love the border war. I really romanticize the history and the pageantry of college football. I think the bronze boot is one of the more unique elements in all of college football and really all of sports. I mean, I think it's up there like with the Stanley Cup, with just one of the cooler trophies that you can win in any setting. So that game means a whole lot to a whole bunch of people. There's a whole lot that goes into it. I mean, they run the game ball from campus to campus. Like, there's just not a lot of games quite like it. And when I grew up, CSU kind of bullied Wyoming a little bit under Sonny Lubick, who was my hero and idol. And it had been kind of a rough stretch, much like the Broncos-Chiefs rivalry over the majority of the last decade. And so to win it, and in particular to win it in front of fans, because the last time they won was in 2020 on an empty stadium. So to win it in front of the home fans for the first time in 10 years and in front of a crowd for the first time since 2015 was really cool.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Especially, I love the rivalry side of college football too, and I think that's something that is changing as the conference realignment has shifted and all of that kind of stuff. But for CSU to be able to get that, I think that's huge. I'll take the Buff side of things here for CU, just since I know we don't have any of the Buffs guys on the show with us today. I got to say, for me personally, and I don't have a shoe in the game on either side. I'm not, I didn't go to either CSU or CU, but just as a sheer fan of college football, CU hitting that Hail Mary against Baylor was just absolutely bonkers
crazy
to me. Like, that was just nuts. As just a fan of, again, football as a whole, like you just had to tip your cap in that moment. The atmosphere, doing that in Colorado at Boulder, like, was just incredible. I know some of the CU fans and our guys here that cover the Buffs, they probably have very specific, like you said, more memorable, when CU clinched going to a bowl game for the first time, and like those types of memories. And I think those are very valid as well. But just again, the walk off against Baylor was just unreal. So that was a lot of fun to see. We'll change pace though. We'll stick with football. Going on to the pro side. Favorite Broncos memory of 2024. What you got? Anything that pops to mind on your end?
I thought that Broncos-Bucks game in week 3 was a lot of fun because Denver's 0-2. Bo Nix had some turnovers the first couple of weeks.
Yep.
And they go into Tampa, and they kind of thoroughly outplay a real team, and it felt like the arrival of Bo Nix. I know they struggled a little bit the week after in the Jets in a rainy, sloppy setting, which I don't put too much stock into, and they ultimately won the game, so it is what it is. But to me, that was the arrival of Bo Nix, and that was the first time in a long time where I personally felt like, all right, the Broncos might actually have something here, and they might like really be building something legitimate. So that's what I would point to. I mean, beating the Raiders at home in the throwbacks, that was awesome. That's another team that, I mean, everybody had the Broncos number, it felt like, for a while, but I like that Broncos-Buccaneers game week 3.
I love that take. I'm going to go with, and I don't remember who they were playing. I don't know if it was the Browns or the Raiders. I can't remember, but I think it was the Raiders. But Bo Nix, that pass up the middle to was it Browns?
That was the Browns.
To
Marvin Mims? Monday night against the Browns.
Yes. I was spacing on who they were playing.
Great
to
call.
Marvin Mims, though, like, that was just, and that was, we had already seen Bo Nix in some glorious moments at that point, but to see that dime of a pass in that moment in the game, and to have Marvin Mims, hit it in stride, take it the length of the field, like, that to me was the, oh my God, there it is. Like, that's a Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady type of play that we just saw out of our rookie quarterback, who, again, had shown some good things leading up to that point. But for me, that was that's it. That's the dude. Like, he's the one. Like, yeah, he's got some rookie moments, but he's going to be the guy. He's your guy. And so that was huge. Again, seeing Marvin Mims. What's up, man? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. To see Marvin Mims, make that catch, I believe it was Mims. Yeah, it was Mims who made that catch just a couple days ago. Although the Broncos lost the game, Mims and Bo Nix have been incredible this season, and that to me was my favorite Broncos memory, at least of this season. James in the Toyota chat says, "Don't forget about 3 MVPs in a calendar year." That was on my list. Nuggets, Avs. Both getting the MVP. I think my favorite moment for both the Nuggets and the Avs was when McKinnon and Jokic showed up together on the same. I believe that was for an Avs game, if I remember correctly. And so Jokic showed up on the ice with McKinnon holding up the respective MVP trophies, and then obviously Travis Hunter winning the Heisman. But that was huge. Like that, just having 2 MVPs in the same arena. Getting to hold their trophies was pretty incredible for 2 championship teams.
They did it twice, too.
Yeah.
Because they did it at the Nuggets game and they did it at the Avs game.
Yeah.
So it was pretty badass seeing each other wear their jerseys.
That was huge. I think we're spoiled here, right? It's a blessing of riches that we've seen this year. And I think we forget it sometimes, or we lose sight of that sometimes, because the season is a roller coaster for all of our teams. The Nuggets have had their ups and downs. The Avs have had their ups and downs. Broncos too. But then you look back and you remember, oh my God, this is an epic era that we are currently a part of in Colorado sports.
Yeah, not a lot of people can say they've witnessed as much greatness in their respective sports as we have these last couple of years. And kind of real quick, I guess, going back to that Broncos-Browns moment that you mentioned, I'll also say as a season ticket holder, a guy that's in the stands every week, that was the best home atmosphere the Broncos have had since 2015, since the Super Bowl season. Like the energy, you could feel it pregame. It was obviously an incredible game. The shootout, that was sick. And, Nikola Jokic, and I mean, McKinnon is nasty as well. But Nikola Jokic is my personal favorite athlete of all time. So, just the fact that we get to watch these dudes do what they do on a nightly basis. And even as a CSU guy, I've talked about it a lot. I have a lot of respect for Travis Hunter. We've never seen anybody do what he's done before in this sport. So it's been cool. And it's important to keep that in perspective, especially because, only one team wins the title. It's a hard thing to do.
I had Hank on TDSP a couple weeks ago, and we had the argument of, is this the greatest era that Denver sports has ever witnessed? Across all the sports. 4 out of your 5 major teams are championship contender teams. That's unheard of.
I think you can argue the floor is the highest as a whole for Colorado sports right now. But you had a run in the late 90s with the Buffs and Rams at their peak, college football wise. You had the Broncos go back to back. The Avs were they won 2 cups in 6 years, but could have won about 5. So I think you maybe a little bit of recency bias there. But I think you could maybe argue this is the most collective talent that we've had across the board.
Yeah, I think that the argument could at least be made. And the fact that we could have a conversation where it's this is, top 3, maybe top 2 best eras in Colorado sports history across all of the teams. That's incredible. I think that's super fun. Really the only team that's just not even close is the Rockies. My beloved Rockies, man. I will give them a shout out because we're going through all.
Rockies were my first love, for the record. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, man.
It's as somebody who's covered a team, I covered 6 straight losing seasons for CSU football. I, at one point in an 18-month stretch, had 4 games to talk about during COVID, and 3 of them were losses of 19-plus points. It's a hard gig when there's no hope whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, how do I, get us hyped after we've lost 200 games in the last 2 years? It's
you don't make any adjustments. You don't draft well. You don't sign any free agents. You're bad, and you don't seem to understand that because you're just doing the same damn thing over and over again.
Oh, don't get me started, man.
Could be such a big, it's a shame that they're not a bigger emphasis in this conversation, because Denver's a great baseball town, and I don't want to derail the whole thing. And I'm sure this as much as anyone. You're a baseball guy. But I was at that 07 tiebreaker game when they beat the Padres about 8 rows behind home plate with my
legendary.
grandfather, and it is still the greatest sporting atmosphere I've ever experienced. I've been to AFC title games, NCAA tournaments, bowl games, you name it. Nothing touched that '07 title. The stadium was shaking, and all this love, all this passion that we have for all these other teams, like, it could be there for the Rockies all summer long, even into the fall. It's just frustrating. Get it together, sell the team, please.
Don't get me started, man. Don't get me started. I will give them their love, though. I think that my favorite memory, at least if we're talking memories here, my favorite Rockies memory, they did have an 8-run comeback against the Braves, or a 7-run comeback in the 8th inning against the Braves. That was like unreal. That was incredible. And then Charlie Blackmon retiring. I think that was really cool. Getting to see Charlie Blackmon, take the field for the last time, like. It was a bittersweet moment, but cool. Again, it's a 100-loss team.
We finally got it. We got Helton in the Hall of Fame.
We got Helton? Yep. So there were some good things to celebrate.
Brenton Doyle being a baller.
Winning
a bunch of awards.
Friend of the pod, Brenton Doyle being a baller. Yeah. No, I mean, there were some good things. It's just, it's a 162-game year that you lost 100 games. So.
Opening day was also fun.
Opening day was fun. Yeah, I mean, you covered the Rapids before we hit this break. You covered the Rapids. Do you have a favorite memory for the Rapids this year? Because they had a good year. I don't want to forget them.
Yeah, man, my favorite part of the year. So for the Rapids, they won the Rocky Mountain Cup, which is something that they rarely do. And I think they hadn't done since like 2010, 2016, something like that.
Yep.
It's been a long time. They finally beat their rivals. It's kind of like the Golden Boot. You got to do it in front of the home fans. You scored a bunch of goals, and the coach was all in. It has to be the best time of the year.
Yeah.
Besides making incredible Leagues Cup run, beating some of the top teams this side of the world, and showing Mexico that they can dominate them at any moment, that has to be the funnest part for me of the year.
Oh, I love that. Also, let's not forget, DU. DU's another incredible team. I don't have very much specifics on them, but DU hockey, their hockey has been pretty incredible. Definitely included. Yeah, definitely included in this list. Got to take a break. After the break, though, I want to talk a little bit about some of the bowl games that we got going on and just the state of college football bowl games as it is. I know this is conversations we've gone in circles about for years now, but now that we've seen a couple of our Colorado teams in the bowl mix, we'll get some reactions to that, and we'll talk a little bowl games as we continue to wrap up our 2024. But before we do, got to give a shout out to some upcoming events here that we have at DNVR. If you scan the QR code on your screen there, bottom of your screen, you can find out about all of our events that we have at thednvr.com/events. But the big one coming up, and I probably don't even have to say this to you for you to know what I'm going to say. Broncos Tailgate, January 5th, 2025, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Biggest game in recent Broncos history, at least. I mean, it feels like every game is the biggest game in recent Broncos history, but this one's it. I mean, this is the big kahuna, right? You gotta win this one, beat the Chiefs, get to the playoffs, and so you want to make sure, even if you're not going to the game, the biggest party in Denver outside of the DNVR bar is going to be at the DNVR tailgate. We're going to have live pregame show, some former NFL, former Broncos players. You guys know they're going to be chopping it up before that thing gets going. And then if you're not going to the game, come drive on over here to the DNVR bar. I saw some incredible videos despite the loss of a packed DNVR bar celebrating some crazy Broncos plays over their last game. So you don't want to miss out. Be there. Last home game for the Broncos. It's going to be a blast. January 5th, head over to thednvr.com/events for more information.
I'll be there. See you guys there.
Yep. Justin will be there. Catch him at the tailgate. At the game, too? You going to the game?
Oh, yeah, man. I'm there every week, 5:35.
Every week. 5:35. You will be there. All right. Got to give a shout out as well, though, to our friends over at Empire Today. I recently just learned that Empire Today has actually not only replaced the floors at our studios, but all of the studios across ALLCITY. So PHLY, PHNX, all of the other studios, they have done the floors in those studios as well. So really cool. And it just goes to show how great they are with their customer service, their quality, all the things that you want when you go and get your floors replaced. Whether you're a business that has a lot of use for floors. I mean, we mess things up here in the studio all the time. Yaya's chucking chairs in between shows every single day. Or if you're just, wanting to replace your floors at your house. Doesn't matter what you're into, what your needs are. Empire Today, they have you covered. They are the best in the business for a reason. They have an incredible thing called the Virtual Floor Designer. You take a picture of your living space, and you can actually see what those new floors are going to look like in that space. Really cool feature. I know a lot of people have used that to make sure that you kind of get an idea of what your floor is going to look like before you put all of that money into it. But look, if you're concerned about money in any way, well, they've also got you covered with that. All listeners of the show can receive a $350 off discount when you use promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/DNVR for details. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast, Christian Saez, Justin Michael, and we just got to witness the first bowl games for both CU and CSU in our recent history. Both teams making a bowl game. Both teams getting beat up a little bit in those bowl games as well. But
putting it
I
lightly.
think, putting it lightly. I think, though, it goes to show that, bowl games are just such an outlier. Even when you're playing your guys, even when you decide to play your starters for a portion of the game or the full length of the game, they're just such an anomaly. And so I think it brings up this conversation again, and we have it, I feel like, every year of, What are the bowl games? What's the trajectory of bowl games? What's the future look like of bowl games? And I think this year really is bringing to the forefront that the bowl games aren't really anything more than just some background noise. Yes, it's good to be able to say you qualify for a game, but beyond that, do you feel like the bowl games hold any more value beyond just the sheer qualification of the bowl game itself?
Are you asking Justin an alumni, or are you asking Justin a football analyst? Because I think the answers are two different things. I think bowl games, because of a lot of weird factors, are not necessarily the greatest representation of the state of a program. I think if you put all your stock into whether a team won a bowl game or not, it's not necessarily going to tell you the whole truth about where that program's at, where it can go moving forward, all that type of stuff. I think to say that they don't matter at all, I would disagree with. I saw thousands of CSU fans show up in Arizona. Mm-hmm. They set a record for attendance at that game. It mattered to them. It matters to the people that spend thousands of dollars to go out and go to these games, that are funding these NIL opportunities for the players. It's not revenue sharing. These players make money from the super fans, committing their hard-earned money to the teams. And I understand for a lot of reasons why the bowl system has been devalued, especially with the college football playoff. These games don't mean as much as they used to. It's a lot easier to get into a bowl game than it used to. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe if there were less bowl games, they would mean more. There were years in the 90s where CSU went 7-5, 8-4. They didn't qualify for a bowl game. You weren't guaranteed a bowl just by going 500 the way that you are now. But I also really disagree that they should not matter at all. And I get it's a balance. I don't know how you incentivize the players to care about them. But I think that the more we devalue some of these things that have always been a big part of college football, just the further we stray from what made college football what it is. There's only going to be one national champion. There's over 130 FBS teams. You have to have it something to play for that's realistic and something to strive for, that if you're not in Alabama, if you're not, in Ohio State. And I just think it's a difficult balance to strike. So sorry if I got up on a soapbox opera there. I didn't mean to monologue on you, but I do think there's a lot that goes into it.
I agree. There's layers. I would say, there's layers to this, and I don't think bowl games are ever going to go away. I think the challenging thing for me, and I was reading this article earlier today, and I don't remember who was the person who said this specifically, but it was someone who oversees the committee that's focused on basically keeping bowl games going. There's a committee out there that preserves the bowl games and the history and all of that kind of stuff. And they were kind of making an argument for it and saying, hey, people love it because you could just turn on the TV and you could just scroll through and you don't even really know who you're going to find, but you know you can find a bowl game. And to me, I felt like that almost argued against why bowl games. I think that to me speaks more to why bowl games are becoming more controversial, because there's no value. There isn't that depth to it that, outside of the local fans. If CSU's in a bowl game, you're going to be there. The diehard CSU fans are going to be watching. Of course, my sister went to Boise State. Granted, Boise's playing in a meaningful bowl game, but if it was a meaningless bowl game, she's still going to watch the Boise State game because that's her team. But beyond that, this whole idea of we're just going to kind of sift through these meaningless games, I think that's where the issue lies. Now, I don't know what the solution to that is, and I understand that's a predicament.
You're a baseball guy, right? At your core, you love baseball. Baseball could make certain tweaks, and they have in recent years. But at the end of the day, you need to appeal to your baseball audience. You're not going to bring in the casuals. And I think one of the things that frustrates me about college football is that the mindset has become, let's cater to the masses, the people who are not diehards, the people who don't care, the people that are TV viewers on the East Coast that don't know a thing about these schools. So I guess I would argue, I don't care if it's meaningless to most, because it does matter to those that are into college football. And where the value may not be what it once was, the games might not mean what they did in the general sphere, the public may not be as invested. Those extra 6 weeks of practice, there are a lot of things that are big for the teams. The most competitive, most successful teams go to bowls and they get that extra 6 weeks, and it just helps you sustain success. But I don't know, man. I know it is a weird spot, and I'm certainly not arguing that the Boise, Idaho Potato Bowl is something that we all need to tune into. I will say, though, having experienced the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, that was a legitimately different type of setting. And I think the more we can have that, as Aaron in the Toyota chat pointed out, those type of settings, the Pop-Tart Bowl, do that. More of that and less of the Potato Bowl and the Mako Who Cares Bowl on Tuesday at 11:30 in the afternoon.
And I like the idea of making rivalries making bowl games into rivalries. And I get that there has to be a level of qualification to even make it to a bowl game. So it's hard to you can't pick and choose the matchups. But I like this idea of, okay, for example, Michigan and Alabama are playing right now. I have no connection to either Michigan or Alabama. However, I like that matchup on paper. And so as a nonchalant football fan, I'm going to watch that bowl game for that reason alone. Maybe there's some incentive to, matching up certain teams in bowl games to allow for the rivalries to happen in a bowl setting, and I don't know how they would do that because, like I said, I know there has to be qualifications to get in and all of this kind of stuff. But even at the smaller local level, you could do the Montana versus Montana State games, those kind of things. If there's a way to make those into bowl games, that feels like that could hold a lot more weight, not only for the local fan base, but for the national fan base as well. Again, that's a logistical nightmare.
Moving forward, I think that's a great idea. I mean, just CSU is not going to be in the same league as Wyoming. Could the Arizona Bowl, instead of being a Mountain West MAC Bowl in the future, could it be a Mountain West Pac-12 Bowl? And then you open up the possibility of Nevada, Boise State. You open up the possibility of CSU versus Air Force or CSU Wyoming.
Yep.
Same deal with if CU Nebraska in a bowl game would be epic. If you could have got a rematch of CSU-CU, another Norvell-Dion showdown, I'm sure the TV ratings would have been insane for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to lean into any way you can lean into the rivalry and the tradition and that type of stuff. I think we need more of that, and we need less of Stanford and Cal being in the ACC.
Yeah, well, and look, you can still have qualifications. You could still have markers at each season that, teams want to achieve. We, instead of saying we became bowl eligible, you can say we hit this mark. We had a winning percentage of this, and that would have made us bowl eligible. But I think fans would be okay with if you shifted the bowl strategy into being the bowl games are the rivalry games. They're the last game of every year, or they're, second, whatever time of the year you put them in. It's bowl week, here on this week, and every single teams play their rivalry games in those weeks. That I think would be probably the best way to go about it, because you're right. CSU-CU playing in a specific bowl game as a rivalry game that just has a cool name to it would be huge. That'd be super fun. We would all love that.
Put it in Vegas. It'd be it's an easy place for people to commute to, like a fun setting. It'd be different than just like the normal regular season game. So there's still like a unique flair to it or something like that. Or maybe you do the opposite. Maybe you just lean into it and it's like the regular season version of a Rocky Mountain Showdown is an on-campus game. But if it's a bowl setting, maybe you play it at Mile High like the way they did in the 2000s, and then you have 75,000 plus people show up for it. Like, I'm really into it. I've never thought about that idea, but I'm going to have you come on the show before, or on the Rams show, and we're going to have to hash this idea out. This is a half-baked idea at the moment.
Yeah.
I think there's a possibility this could be.
Let's get real
solid
about it. Yeah, I like it. No, and I think because I think one of the biggest things that's an issue for me with bowl games now is that there's no incentive for players, the best players, to play. And so, yeah, you get your teams that sometimes choose to. I mean, CU obviously, had, their stars playing. But, like, Cam Ward played for, a second and was criticized for playing even at all in their bowl game. And it's like this idea of...
I hate that, though. I hate that we've gone so far. Like, I understand the financial risk, so I don't fault players when they choose not to play. But I do kind of hate that we've normalized that as fans, that like, and maybe it's good because I don't know, there's so many layers. Like they're human beings and you don't want to just view them as pawns in the game. But at the same time, like, I feel like it's almost become cool to not want to compete, to not be a part of a team, to only think about what's best for my selfish interests or my personal gain. Maybe it's not even selfish. Maybe it's rightful to be looking out for you because we probably would too in that setting. I don't know, like, why play anything? To win, to be a part of it with your team.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Do I sound a million years old right now? Probably. I don't know.
That's how this argument ends up changing over time anyways. Yeah, you got to incentivize the competitiveness of it. If you're playing backups and it's a youth game,
that's
like,
why
it doesn't...
you have a great idea, because you'd want to play a rivalry game, I'd think.
I agree. Well, hey, look, we got to hit our last break. After the last break, though, I want to go into some New Year's resolutions for our teams. Talk about, some hopes, some expectations, how we want to evaluate that for 2025. Going to pause for a second, and we'll be back with more. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast. Christian Saez, Justin Michael, wrapping things up here. Last segment of our 2024 wrap-up show, as we ring in the new year here in just a few hours, really, which is crazy to think about. It's that time of year where we talk about New Year's resolutions. What's to come for our teams going into 2025. Some of our teams are still in the thick of their season. Some of our teams haven't even started their season. So I'll ask you again to start, since you're the Rams guy. Rams just wrapped up their football season, so you can kind of look ahead towards next season as all right, we're going to start having these conversations. What's your overarching New Year's resolution for next year for CSU football?
Take it to the next level. You got to be more consistent. I think you showed real progress, but now it's about taking what you've accomplished so far and building off of it. Like we said before, this has got to be the floor, not the ceiling. And I think finding a way to show up when the lights are brightest, as much success as you had, you still started and ended the season in kind of a letdown fashion. Both, CSU and CU had a chance to play their way into their conference title games and came up short. I think the hope is kind of being like, all right, we won some games, we were in the mix. Now be a true contender.
Take the next step. I like that. And I think I would actually argue the same thing for CU. I think like both CSU and CU had very similar seasons in the sense that they took a step forward, but it wasn't enough if you ask a lot of the fans. Like you were going forward and you had some pretty big wins to put on your resume. You felt good about them, but there still was times and moments, games, plays where you fell short. And I think if I'm, again, going to speak for the CU guys, it'd probably be a similar sentiment, right? You just got to take a step forward, continue to grow. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of college football today is that because of the NIL and transfer portal, all of that kind of stuff, you can have an incredible year where you go and you're playing lights out, and for whatever reason, your coach moves on to another school, or, you know, a certain player leaves or whatever, you feel like the next year you come around and you're starting, you know, 2 levels below because you lost a ton of seniors or whatever. And so college football, it's so hard to build on that growth. So for both CSU and CU, I think having a step forward next year based off of what you did this year is huge. Broncos, I think the NFL, it's a little bit different because there isn't the transfer portal. You know, it's not as fluctuating as college sports are, but you do still have to build, and you still have to take that step forward. So is there a New Year's resolution that you have, again, knowing that the Broncos have still games to play in this season, is there a New Year's resolution that you want for the Broncos as you look ahead from tomorrow on?
Yeah, I think they need to be a legitimate contender for the AFC West. And how that happens, I think you use a lot of that money.
I like that.
That is, you know, currently dead, and you go out and get some weapons for Bo Nix, take it to the next level. The Chiefs they've been the standard now for a while, but, you know, like every run comes to an end at some point. I think the Broncos and Chargers are both kind of like on each other's, like they're like right there neck and neck, both trying to be like that next team in the AFC West. And I would like to see them, even if you don't necessarily win it, but like truly have a realistic shot to win the division. You know, don't blow the games you blew against the Chargers and Chiefs this year. Like, that's the next step to me.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, getting the small victories, and I don't mean small victories as in the overall thing. I mean like winning close games, right? You know, games like we saw on Saturday, games like we saw against the Chiefs, which again they should have won. You know, but regardless, like being able to overcome that last piece. And I think you look at teams like the Chiefs, who are considered a really good team. They, as they've shown this year, have the ability to win the closest games, right? You get down to the wire, and time again, you have the pieces to win those games. The Broncos, I think, can build into that. Are they there yet right now? No, they're not. But are they on the right track? Are they going the right direction? Yes, I think they are. So I think that's kind of the big thing for me, is just, being able to win those close games and take that step forward. Avs, we kind of talked about this. I talked about this with Harrison on TDSP on Monday. The Avs, you know, I'd said it before, like, oh, well, the Avs kind of had Christmas come early. I think the Avs' New Year's resolution is already there, at least from my perspective. You just got to make sure your goalies, you know, the guys that you just picked up in those trades, continue to grow into those spots. You know, I think the biggest question mark going into the remaining part of the season for the Avs was, what's our goaltender situation like? And then you went and you got those 2 goalies, and now you feel good about it. So that, to me, was the New Year's resolution for the Avs. They figured that out. I'm excited to see what the Avs can be. I think if I'm going to go a little bit deeper, be able to ease Landeskog back into play here before the playoffs come around. That would be my biggest thing, because right now it's like, you know, is he even going to be ready by playoffs? Like, that's the biggest question mark.
You got to find a solution one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I love him. Like, one of my favorite players of all time, not trying to be insensitive. You have been hamstrung by this roster situation between him and Val Nichushkin for 2 years. It's been big factors in why they haven't been able to go on the playoff runs that they probably should have been able to. You just need an answer one way or another. Is he coming back, or is he not? And then let's move forward and just get out of this weird place of limbo.
Yep. Get some clarity moving forward. Nuggets are in the same boat, I think. And you know, a little bit more chaotic, I would say, because there's just so many moving pieces, I think, for the Nuggets that are trying to get kind of nailed down. But if you find that consistency, and maybe that's my term, maybe that's the New Year's resolution for the Nuggets: consistency. Right? There's games where you go out and you look like the Denver Nuggets championship team, and then there are nights where you're losing to the worst teams in the NBA. Find that consistency, create that identity, and just lean into that into the new year. That's all I got for the Nuggets.
I'm with you, man. Like, I got to see Nikola Jokic win a ring, so everything is kind of gravy at this point. But It sure would be nice to win another one.
Yeah, it would be, especially when you know they can. I mean, they've got the pieces. It's the same team, just maybe a couple years older, but it's the same team that we had more or less. And Russell Westbrook has been a huge addition. I've loved seeing what he's been able to do with the Nuggets too. So the Nuggets have what it takes. They just got to clean some things up, get consistent. Looking down the list, Rockies. I mean, the Rockies probably need the most New Year's resolutions. They have a whole list. I'm actually going to be
Jesus, dude.
They need a miracle.
Angels in
man.
the outfield, possible.
Yeah, where's Matthew McConaughey? Running out there. I will say, if we're getting granular for the Rockies, you got to embrace the development. Embrace. I don't like the term youth movement, but that's kind of what it is. The Rockies have really struggled across the last history of the Rockies. Let's be realistic, to embrace when they need to kind of rebuild, reconstruct. I think they're starting to realize that now. But I don't want next year to come around and the Rockies to try to lean into the veterans and do all this kind of stuff, even if they're losing games. I don't want to see Jacob Stallings be catching every single game. Like I need to be seeing the guys that are going to be the future of your franchise getting minutes now and getting a lot of reps. And so no one expects the Rockies to be a playoff team next year, but I need them to be committing to that development. That's the New Year's resolution in my mind for the Rockies. And, and like you said, pray, hope for a miracle. That's all you can do. It's about all I got for the Rockies.
I'd love to see a good baseball team again. Please, someday, please.
Please, one day. Hey, yeah, you got anything for the Rapids? You got a little New Year's res for the Rapids?
Yes, and it's just get deeper. Just have a lot more players on your squad that can help your team, because the biggest issue with the Rapids was that they were flying high. They were beating teams that they shouldn't have been. At the end of the year, it tapered off because all those guys were exhausted. Some of them played way over the limit at times. And it's just have enough players that can fill a squad at the end of the year as well.
I love it. Are you a New Year's resolution guy, Yaya?
I used to be, but then I realized that every day can be a new year if you wanted to.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just like, whenever I'm ready, I'm
Very
going to do whatever I
philosophical of
want.
You're more emotional about it. You're like, you know what? Today I'm going to wake up. It's the middle of July. I'm going to wake up and make a change.
Every day's a new day, baby. It doesn't matter if it's January 1st or if it's June 30th. You going out there and you're going to do your thing.
I like it. There's a lot of data that shows that actually like doing New Year's resolutions, even if you don't stick to them, is good for you. That you can get some momentum. You can start to build some new habits. So I like New Year's resolutions, even if I recognize that they don't, usually stick around for as long as we all hope they do. You got a New Year's resolution, Justin?
Yeah, I got to get back in shape, guys. I had a long year, so there's just a lot that went into that. We don't need to make it a bummer because this has been such a fun show, but
yeah,
I'm very much looking forward to 2025, and hopefully I can come on this show a few more times and chop it up with you.
Yeah, man, you got a house. The Rams played well this year. Like it's been a good year. I mean, I know there's ups and downs to every year, just like there's ups and downs to all of our teams. But I like it. The health thing for me is probably mine too. Not that I'm like unhealthy, but like Marissa and I are going to have a baby eventually. Like we're looking at moving into a new house within the next couple of years. It's like cleaning up some of those areas in my life to get ready to take those next steps. So, it's good. It's a good time of year. I like it because you can set those goals and, adjust along the way. And hopefully, as we've talked about here on the show, our sports teams here in Colorado, they do the same thing. Set those goals for 2025, have some specific plans of how you want to achieve that. And who knows, maybe in the next couple days we get to be talking about a Broncos playoff team, maybe next couple months, a Nuggets, Avs playoff team. You never know. Things could go up.
Heck yeah, man. Attack this year with the most enthusiasm known to mankind.
Love it. I love it. Perfect timing as well. We are wrapping up things on the show. We appreciate you guys in the Toyota chat for hanging out with us, watching here on the show. Give us a like, hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't already. We always appreciate hanging out with you guys. And be safe out there this New Year's Eve. I know we're going to go hang out with some friends tonight. So be safe, everyone. Enjoy yourselves. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you on the other side here on the Denver Sports Podcast.
We all sit the mayor.